On today's episode of Let's Grow Together, I talk with Kaitlyn Kessler, and we go down in some rabbit holes, but I promise you this is an episode worth going into. Such a different take and variety into, while also talking about many of the fundamentals that we often talk about on this show through habits and how that all correlates. So it's a really cool and interesting episode that I know you're going to enjoy. Kaitlyn is awesome, and we have a lot of similarities and similar beliefs and habits and exercises that we do, while also getting into the woo of talking to our higher selves. What? I know. More on this, but first, the intro. Welcome to Let's Grow Together. My name is Nick Monotadibus, motivational speaker and digital marketing strategist. And this podcast is all about helping you grow both in life and business. Let's dive in. All right, I am so excited. We were just talking right before here about our commonality among the things that we're going to discuss today, the things that this show is all about. So I am so excited to welcome a very special guest, Kaitlyn Kessler. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here because I'm excited to talk about what I know we're going to talk about. So thank you very much for having me.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for being here. So real quick, just tell us a little bit about who you are, who you serve.
Yeah. So I am a coach. I work with business owners, service-based business owners who, to be quite honest, are kind of over their business. They've been going at it for a while and they're kind of hitting this cap of, I can only work so many hours, and I raised my rates up. You know, I followed all those blog posts that I read about raising my rates, and now I'm burnt out and I'm exhausted and I'm kind of resenting my clients and I don't know what to do next. And I really help them make some shifts in their mindset and their business and come up with a business model that is really aligned to what they actually want to be doing versus, you know, what they think they should be doing, that is profitable and that really feels just a lot more effortless and easy and flowy and all of the good words. I am not about hustling. So yeah, that's me.
Love it. Yes. Flowy, finding those things that just like make you feel amazing and effortless. That's awesome. And I think that's like really amazing. And I love, you know, the idea of helping people, you know, pivot in that and like doing something that you love. Again, like when you're a business owner, you should love what you do. It should not be a stressful, obviously there are stresses, but if it's stressful all the time, you're like, what are you doing?
Completely. I know for myself and my business history, and then for, you know, the people that I work with, it's like you get started doing something because you're like, you're not bad at it. Like, oh, I'm kind of good at this. And then you just keep doing it, but you never really get a check in and you're like, oh, I don't, like, this isn't my life's work. This isn't my passion. This isn't like, you know, big picture, like what I'm here to do. And so, yeah, it never gets to feel really easy and flowy and effortless because, like, you're right, it's not what you're meant to do. There's something more. And I love uncovering that with people. So yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Love it. Yes. I look forward to hearing more about that, but I want to get right into the juicy stuff and really dive into, you know, our morning routines and wonderful habits that we create and how that helps us for success. So let's just dive in. You know, what is your favorite like morning habit, or take us through like your day that just like you love how you start your day?
Yeah. So my morning kind of like routine or ritual really centers on not so much like a checklist of items, but rather getting to a feeling of like, okay, I'm good. I'm calm. If there's any fires when I open my inbox, I know I can handle it. Like, it's just a sense of peace and not like frantic energy, like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. Like I do what I have to do to get out of that mode if I start to go in that mode. So most of the time, what it looks like is meditation and journaling. However, like if there's something big on my mind, I will do, some tapping. I do EFT, if you're familiar with that, so tapping on your pressure points. And I'll, even if it's like something that's really kind of weighing on me, I'll even like get out and like go for a walk or something like that, just to kind of get energy moving. But the main consistent things besides coffee are meditation and journaling. And it's super simple and requires no bells and whistles, right? It's just like being in your head a little bit and writing out what comes up for you.
Love it. I want to hear more. What did you say? EFT with the tapping? Can you
Yeah.
talk more about that?
Oh yeah. So emotional freedom technique. It's I guess it's technically under the it's not under NLP, but it's taught alongside NLP like certifications, neuro-linguistic programming certifications. And it is a way to help move energy sort of through the body. So if you're really just like in your head because you're worried about money or getting another client or whatever is on your mind, right? Literally anything, you can help your body to process that faster, to move that emotion and everything through you faster and get that energy moving so that it's not just kind of weighing on you. So you go around these different points on your mostly on your face, like around your eyebrow, on the side of your eye, under your eye, and you just tap on it. And it's interesting because it goes against in a lot of ways, like the positive vibes only message, because it allows you to actually say what's coming up. So like you might be tapping and saying like, I'm scared I'm not going to have any money. Like it's okay to say that. Like you don't have to, keep it all positive. But in doing that, it really lets you process and feel your feelings and move through it. And so it's really, really good for kind of lifting that weight off your shoulders if there's anything going on in your world.
That's amazing. How did
It's
you
so
learn about
amazing.
that? That's so unique. Like I've
Yeah.
never heard of that before.
Oh yeah, it's so good. It's really, really simple. Like there's a ton of YouTube and stuff videos about it, but um, it's really simple. It doesn't require any like tools and stuff, like no extra things, like it's just your hands and your body. And so that's why I really like it, because it's like you can do it anywhere, you can do it anytime. You don't even have to like, once you get pretty like good at it, you don't have to like say anything out loud. So you can just kind of like do it, quietly by yourself and not draw too much attention to you. Um, and I learned about it. I don't remember where I learned about it the very first time, but I got certified in it as part of like the certification that I went through for some of my coaching things with like life and success coaching and the neuro linguistic programming coaching. That was part of that like bundle, I guess, for lack of a better word.
That's so cool. Yeah.
It's
And
really good.
yeah, I may have to look into that a little bit more. It's
My
fascinating.
favorite YouTuber that does it is Brad Yates. He's like such strong dad energy, like in the best way possible. Like you want him to tell you that you're doing, you want him to tell you that you're just like doing good. Like he's like that kind of vibe. So I recommend him.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
Cool. So you do that, and then
Yeah.
you mentioned journaling and meditation. What's your journaling process like?
Yeah. So I do this for like clients and students and stuff too. I have a long list of like kind of prompts to get you started. And so if I'm really drawing a blank for whatever reason, if there's just like, I don't know where to start, I'll just go to those and just pick one out at random just to see what comes up. Most of the time, I don't need that. Most of the time, I kind of start with writing things that I'm grateful for, things that I want to happen, kind of like scripting it in the future, like it is now whatever date, and I have this, and I did this, and whatever. And then eventually, what ends up happening, I notice when I'm really getting into writing, is like I start kind of uncovering some of my own, resistances and stories and things like that. So, like for example, if I'm writing, I want to get this many clients and make this much money, and then I started feel myself starting to write things like, but I'm scared to do this, or I'm nervous about doing that. And so for me, it's a really good tool to kind of see what's going on in my head and see what's holding me back from doing the things I want to do, and then I can take further steps on working through those limitations.
Awesome. So yours is much more open formatted and just kind of like what's coming up for you at that time.
Yeah, I think when I first got started with it, I probably depended on prompts a little more just because it was new. Um, but now it's kind of, yeah, it's in this rhythm of just kind of starting with things that I'm really happy about and things that I want to come. And then, if there's anything that comes up about that, that's needs to be worked through or thought about more, I kind of process on the page.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. I love it.
Yeah.
I always find that, so it is, because I think it's a great point too, to kind of reiterate that starting with prompts is a great
Oh
strategy,
yeah.
because I did the
Yeah.
same thing. I started with prompts, but now it's like I still have my own prompts, but it's
Mhm.
still like a little bit more open format than the prompts. But like, to get started, I think everyone should probably start with prompts. Do you
Oh,
agree?
completely. Yeah, oh, yeah. Like when I always, it's one of those things, when you're like, you're on your journey doing whatever, and like you kind of forget what it's like when you got started. And so I always include like journal prompts and affirmations and anything that I do, for people. And I always kind of think of that as like, oh, I hope they use it. And, I don't know if they'll actually use it. And it's always like the number one thing that people are like, oh my gosh, prompt 42 changed my life. And I'm like, what was prompt 42 again? But I'm like, it's so good. People really, especially when they're just a new practice, they haven't done it, right? They haven't sat with their thoughts before. It's so good to ask, just different questions and things to see what comes up, because they don't know, they've never done that before. So yeah, I totally recommend prompts. And I also recommend, if you're resistant to it or struggling with it, to set a timer and make yourself write for at least 5 minutes, because after 5 minutes you're kind of like going, like you'll probably go way past 5 minutes. So if you can at least get to there, you're probably in for a good journaling sesh.
Awesome. That's a great tip. Love it. And you mentioned like talking to your future self, right? How does that tie into your morning routine?
Yeah, yeah. So I do a lot of that. It's gonna sound maybe like, I don't know how woo you usually get on here, but I do some meditation, and usually in that meditation, I will do, basically, this is gonna maybe sound a little crazy, but I basically like hang out with my higher self, and I'm like, well, what are we doing today? Like, what do I need to work on? Like, what do you have for me? What do I need to know? Um, and it's honestly kind of how I get clarity on like next steps. Like, as potentially out there as that sounds, that's really, yeah, I don't think that's a practice that I've started with. That's definitely something I've grown into. But I think it's something that anybody is capable of, right? It's just getting really centered and really in tune with what's going on in your mind, and asking questions like, what do I need to do today? Or what's my next steps? And listening for the answer and expecting there to be an answer. And then the trick is, when there is an answer, actually doing it. That's the hard part.
Right. Taking action on it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny. You mentioned like not talking about the woo as much. I feel like there's been very, very mild to little to no woo on this show, but
Oh
I
no.
have no, 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 but I have the woo in me. That's the thing. So
Yeah.
I haven't talked much about like communicating with your higher self. So, this is a great opportunity to talk about it, because
Yeah.
I've only communicated, in my opinion, with my higher self twice. I haven't tried it like that many times,
Mhm.
but they were like super powerful moments into connecting with your higher self and listening.
Yeah.
And I think it can sound a little weird and a little woo-woo. So if
Mhm.
you're still listening, like bear with us here, because I think that there's a part of it that is also just realizing that you're thinking about and talking with um, the person that you want to become.
Yeah.
So like if you think about it more like that, and there's a lot of more of the less woo-woo minds. If you think about it from that standpoint, into like who you want to be and what they would say to you in this situation, it's very similar in that regard. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think like, if it's like kind of feeling weird or anything, I think a good reminder is that, like, I would argue that at some point in everybody's life, they've had an experience where they got that kind of intuitive hit, or that like, oh, turn left here instead, or oh, get in that line at the grocery store. It's the same thing. It's just doing it more intentionally instead of, a random little. I have a good one that happened to me this morning, actually. It's gonna sound really weird.
Yes, go on. Yes, share.
So I was driving pretty early because I had to bring my partner somewhere early. And so I was driving back by myself, and I don't drive very often. I don't like driving. It's not like my favorite thing. So I just don't do it. So I was a little nervous, and it was early enough that it was still dark. It was like maybe like 5. And so I'm, definitely like 10 and 2ing it. Like I'm like white knuckles, like really nervous. Not, I'm like fine driver. I just get really nervous. And so I was going, and for some reason I'm driving down a road that does have a lot of trees and stuff, but there's also houses everywhere. So this thought seems really irrational, but I had this thought in my head of like, you should watch out in case there's a deer. And like I live in South Carolina, like there are deer. And so, but I remember thinking, as I was thinking, what a weird thought. There would never be a deer here. A raccoon ran out, and how raccoons usually scurry. This raccoon stopped in the middle of the road the way that a deer would. And so I had to like slam on the brakes. And I was like, that's weird. Like that's like a little chill bumpy. So anyway, wasn't a deer, but
Yes.
still could have been an issue. Luckily I was alert because I was like, why would I think about a deer? Oh, raccoon, So but I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of people have had situations like that. That's to me your higher self. That's something else coming into play.
Right. Like something is looking out for you in some regard and preparing you. You can call it coincidence if you want, but you have your choice in believing whatever you think it is, but you can't deny that those things happen, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have there been other situations that you've had that happen? Do you have any other examples?
Yeah, I do have another one. It's a little bit of a longer story, but it's a good one.
All right,
Do you
let's
want to
hear it.
hear
I'm
it?
ready.
Okay.
Yeah. I find this very fascinating. This is like wasn't necessarily expecting that this is where it was going to go, and I like to lean into those. So,
Yeah. So years ago, when right after I graduated from college, I went to go visit my sister who she was living in like the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, because her husband was in pilot training for the Air Force. And so he was going to be gone. I had just graduated. And so she's like, come visit me, like, let's hang out. Da, da, da. So I went out there. And because it was such a small town, it made more sense for me to fly into Dallas and then to drive. So we spent a couple of days in her very small town. We got kind of bored. Like, I was flying out of Dallas in a few days. So I was like, let's just go to Dallas and hang out. Like, the bigger city, obviously there'll be more stuff to do. So we go to Dallas, and for some reason, on the day that I'm leaving, I'm like, you should just come home with me. Just come home with me. Like, I just like had this like thing, like, just come home with me. Mom and I will be so happy to see you. Like, your James or her husband was gone. Like, just come home with me. It'll be fine. And to her credit, like, she was like, okay, which is like kind of out of character of her. And so she like bought a ticket, like got on the plane, and when we get to my parents' house, they were like, oh my gosh, did you hear what happened? Da, da, da. And we're like, no. And on the road that she would have been driving back home to, there had been like horrific tornadoes because it's like the Midwest, like they're like Googleable tornadoes, like they like totally massacred this like town in Oklahoma. And she would have been like on the road at the time in that city, like all of this stuff. And I was like, you're welcome. Like that's the craziest one for sure.
oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
some like Final Destination kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things that at the time we thought it was so funny, and so, not funny because it was like sad that that happened, but like so it's just like weird. We didn't think about it, and then I wasn't really into this stuff at that time, but then like years later, I'm like reflecting. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's actually huge. Like, but at the time, it was just like, whoa, weird. What a coincidence. Nothing big. But yeah, now I literally am like, now I'm like, you're welcome, Brittany. Like, I saved you.
Nice, you can hold that over forever.
Yeah. So sorry for going down those rabbit holes.
No, it's cool. I think that's such a unique story, and like just taking notice on the things that happen around us. I think that's a big point of this too,
Mhm.
is just like being self-aware and noticing when something's coming up for you. Your tuition and certain things. I mean, because I've had moments like this too. I talked about one recently on a previous episode where I talked about doing the course for myself or doing it for my business. But the other recent one that I had, and it's becoming more closer to happening, is I was sitting on the beach in San Diego 1 year ago in October, and was just sitting there, and I was called there. It was like, you need to move here. You need to be here. You need to make this happen. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, I can't explain it, but it's this weird calling that I'm being pulled there from. Just that it's like I've never had a feeling like this before. And it
Mhm.
was so powerful that there is like nothing else that I have thought about. I think about moving every single day. And official today, I booked the RV to make the trip, so there's no going back now to
Okay.
this trip. So it's like, you got to recognize when yourself is talking to you and follow through with that. And I look forward to kind of sharing, because I can guess that something's going to happen in San Diego, or things going to happen in San
Yeah.
Diego that are going to add to this story to
Oh
another
yeah.
level. So I look forward to sharing that. Maybe looking back on this episode. Um,
Yes.
it's
Oh, I
a,
love that. I can't wait to see you unfold. And I just love that. That's such a good example of just like really hearing it and being like, yeah, okay. Versus like, there's like you could have been like, oh, I don't know, I can't, like, I don't know if I can figure out how to move here. Maybe in 10 years. Like you could have made all of these things up, but instead you're just like, no, like this is it. This is happening. Like
Right.
committed.
And it goes back to what you said in talking like about action, and how
Mhm.
much that's such an important aspect of this, that we, act on those feelings, that we say something when we're feeling that thing that's coming up for us, when we do that thing that's coming up for us, because amazing things happen when you do those things.
I totally agree. Yeah. That's been the hardest, I think. And still a work in progress, right? Like of hearing something or getting that feeling or whatever and trusting that like, okay, I can do this or I should, I'm going to act on this, like really feeling like, okay, all right, I'll do it versus letting, your stories and your resistances and your beliefs and all these things kind of prevent you from something bigger.
Becoming your higher self,
Yeah.
closer to your higher self, bringing it back to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an amazing, it's really cool. I'm glad we went in this direction. This is fascinating. I love this.
Me too.
And to kind of go into, so like you talk with your higher self, is that part of your meditation, or is your meditation a little different?
Uh, it's kind of hit or miss. Like some days, if I when I'm meditating, if it's just like there's probably a better word for this, but if it's just like not really feeling like like I'm not getting totally relaxed, I'm not clearing my thoughts, like something like that, just like it just isn't clicking. That's when I usually will be like, okay, like what's coming up? What do I need to hear? What do I need to process? So sometimes it happens kind of instead of the meditation, but most times I guess it's like I meditate for anywhere from like 15 to 30 minutes, and it's like just actually clearing my mind and focusing on the breath and the stuff that you hear about with meditation. And then after that's like kind of done, while I'm still in that relaxed state, I'll like intentionally go in and kind of see what's on the docket for me today from my higher
Love it. That is,
self.
that's it's such a fascinating way. So you're talking to yourself, you're talking to your higher self. Sounds funny when you say it like that. You're journaling, gratitude, got your coffee. Do you have anything else that you do in your morning routine?
Yeah, so I think so I actually like teach on sort of like an established routine that I help people do. And it's always with a disclaimer of like, take this and make it your own. And so it includes all of those pieces. And the additional thing, which is one of my favorite things to also talk about, all of this is doing a little bit of work around forgiveness. I feel like eh, gratitude and all those things are talked about quite a bit in this kind of industry and world, but uh, the other side of that coin is forgiveness and like letting things go. And that's kind of like the EFT thing that we are talking about. The tapping thing is kind of involved with that too. But just kind of being like, okay, you know what? Like maybe I didn't do this thing the best I could, or maybe this person upset me or whatever, but like I'm ready to let that go. Like that's not a burden I'm carrying with me into today. And so that ends up coming up usually through the journaling and stuff too. It's just kind of letting go of things that are no longer serving me through. forgiveness. So that's the only
Love
other piece.
that.
That's all of it.
No, I love that. I think that's such an important aspect to bring into a routine. And I love, talking about how everyone's different. You got to figure out what works for you. That's something that I talk a lot about when it comes to
Mhm.
morning routines, because that's how I figured for me too. It's like, you hear different things, you incorporate it, but forgiveness comes in so many different ways. And I feel like the biggest one, like kind of like what you're saying, is forgiving yourself for
Mhm.
things that maybe happened in your past or things that you've done. Um, you know, the thing is that serving you? And holding on
Yeah.
to that. And I feel like that's the important question to ask yourself. Is like, is it
Yeah.
serving me to hold on to this, or can I finally forgive myself for
Yeah.
these mistakes or things that you've done?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's not like, I guess when you say like you should practice forgiveness, like that kind of immediately puts most people's defenses up. They're like, I'm not gonna forgive so and so for doing that to me or whatever. And I totally get that because that's how I felt about it too. But really it's not about them. It's about like your role and stuff and being like, you know what, like I'm sorry that I put myself in that situation, or I'm sorry that I, whatever it is, right? And really taking, that ownership over it, and also like deciding that that's no longer going to stand in your way. So I do think and actually sometimes I'm confused that it's not talked about more, because I think it's such a powerful practice. Like I think it should be talked about just as much as gratitude and stuff like that, but I guess it's not as exciting.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think this is an important thing to message, because if you're a regular listener, you know that I kind of have in more recent episodes been yelling at people, being like, if you're not doing gratitude, what are you doing? Because we've had every single guest on the show mention gratitude. If you're not taking notes yet, so it's great to kind of bring this new perspective. And obviously, gratitude is still an important part,
Yeah,
but adding
totally.
a new level that can be, it's almost like the other side to gratitude. It's
That's how
almost
I
like
see
they're
it. Yeah.
two coins. So I'm interested in kind of incorporating that. I think there's levels of me, and to be able to bring that into my world. So thank you.
You're so welcome. Anytime. No, yeah, I think
Awesome.
I totally agree that it's like, yeah, they go hand in hand for sure. So I'm glad that you've been talking about gratitude on here too.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a nonstop. It's such a important part, like it's an amazing thing to be here on this earth, just to like be alive, to like wake up that day, um,
Yeah.
is enough to be like amazing. And if we can shift our perspective to start seeing things like that, the other things start to wash off us, you know, things just like bounce off us, literally, where nothing can like get in our way when we come from that place. So big
Totally.
believer in that. So you've got a lot of exposure in this. I know we've talked a lot about this in different areas.
Hmm.
Um, so what are some of your books, and I know I'm sure there's a lot of similarities here, that you have like acquired this, or training that you've acquired all of this to kind of obviously create your own and shift your own, but you had to start from somewhere. So there are certain
Yeah.
like books that really stand out to you in this regard.
Yeah. So I actually haven't read like what's the one that everyone, Miracle Morning or
The
something
Miracle
like that.
Morning. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually haven't read that because there's a part of me that really like resist somebody telling me like you have to do these, four things or whatever, even though I've just said,
It's seven, but
but I've
yeah.
suggested, I've suggested you don't have to do any of them. So like I haven't actually read that book. But I think probably the biggest book that has got me in this place of thinking about routines and habits and rituals is a book called The Power of Habit, by Charles Duhigg. Have you read that?
Yep. Uh-huh.
Um, and it's not a spiritual book or like a woo woo book or anything. It's literally just talking about habits and forming them and how to form them. And for whatever reason, that book just clicked with me because I was like, oh, like I have control over this. Like I guess prior to that, I thought, oh, I just have this habit because I have this habit or whatever. Like I didn't think about how that habit came to be. And so that book really opened up like being intentional with what I create because it will create the desired result, and making that automatic and subconscious and going in the background. So that's probably where I like started my journey into all things
Yeah,
habit.
it's a great book. That
Yeah.
definitely was one of the earlier ones that I, started. And it is so interesting on how they communicate, or how he communicates talking about the habit loop. And I remember I did like a bunch of videos about it, and I've definitely
Okay.
talked about it on the show, some of the earlier episodes. And it's just like once you understand how your habits are formed and why you have both good habits and bad habits, and it brings awareness to that, to what's triggering your bad habit, and then how to overcome them and disrupt it.
Mhm.
It's so fascinating. How many have you read it more than once?
Uh, I think I read it like once and a half. Like I think I read it and I was like, this is great, and like opened it up and like was like, I gotta read it again. I'm sure I missed stuff, but I didn't make it back through the whole time. So no. Should I read it again? Should I put it on the list?
I mean, I'm a big believer, so I've actually I've listened to Atomic Habits 3 times,
Oh,
and I've listened to High Performance Habits. I'm on my fourth time, I think.
oh wow. You're
Yeah.
crushing it. The both of those books are sitting in my on my bookshelf. I currently am reading 3 books at once. I'm like, I love reading so much. And every time I read a book and they reference another book in that book, so then I have to go buy that book. And so my to read list is over 100, like probably over 100 books long, to be honest. Um, right now I'm reading no books about habits, but books about really weird stuff.
Oh yeah? Tell me more.
Well, so one of the books I'm reading is called Letting Go. It's by, what's his name? David R. Hawkins, I'm pretty sure. Um, and that ties into, if you've been listening to this, if you were interested in the conversation about, processing your emotions and that kind of stuff earlier when we were talking about tapping, this book, Letting Go, is all about that. It is about kind of the levels of like consciousness and how emotions register in your body. It's scientific and woo, like it's both. Um, the guy that wrote it, I was like kind of unsure about it. And then in the introduction, it's really funny. He goes through these things like, so you've done yoga and you've gone to Bali and you've done this. And he's like, so you drink ayahuasca. Like he just starts like listing off all these things. He's like, and none of it worked. And I was like, this guy's sassy. Like I can get into this. And so then he goes into talking about, what you actually have to do. And so that kind of got me hooked because I was like, I like a sassy, assertive author. I can get into that. So I'm not done with it yet, but I do really like it. If you're interested in the topic of emotions and feelings and processing them and having more control over them, or I guess less control, but in a good way, I recommend that book. And then the other book I'm reading right now is Holographic Universe, which is way down the rabbit hole.
Say that again.
Holographic Universe.
Holographic
Wait,
Universe.
now I just said it and it sounds wrong. I'm gonna make sure I'm saying the right title. For some reason, it sounded really weird when I said it. Maybe because it's
I
just a weird.
mean,
No, yeah, Holographic Universe.
yeah, no, I think that's just that sounds fascinating. And you
I
said
can't
you've
really.
started it?
Yeah, I can't tell you much about it because a lot of it is. It's gonna take a reread, and maybe another one. But it's basically, it's super like quantum physics, like nothing. It's way down a rabbit hole. It's
That
good.
sounds
It's
cool.
interesting, but it's weird.
Yeah, I might have to check that one out. If you have to I feel if you have to read or listen to a book again, then that says something about the level of like intellectual content that's going on. And personally, I think you should reread books more often because you do get something more the second time around. And that's why I've chosen to do some of the habit books. To be honest, I haven't read a second book that wasn't a habit book. So
Yeah.
that's like where I'm at. Yeah, clearly there's an obsession about that aspect, which is why I knew this was going to go well. And talking about
Yeah.
these unique books and habits. Um, but
And I was
to
taking it
just
down all the weird rabbit holes.
yeah, which is so cool and fun, because again, this like provides such a unique thing because you never know what one of the listeners may pick up, be like, well, yeah, I wasn't that interested in some of the other areas, but that sounds fascinating. So again, like providing a unique perspective and variety, I think is really important, and what I like to bring to the show. So thank you for bringing it to the show.
Anytime, anytime. I am
Yeah.
excited to talk about. I'm curious to hear. I'm curious to see uh what habits we overlap with. Like what like intentional habits have you created? Like I feel like I really like talking about setting up like basically I guess biohacking for lack of a better word. That's
Yeah.
kind of my
Yeah.
interest.
I mean, I think so. The biggest thing for me and my morning routine is that it is intentional and that it is
Mm,
not something that is done going through the motions to just do it. Because it does not work then if you do it that way. If you're just
yeah.
like, oh, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for this, and you're just like writing it down to just write it down, then it's not going to work. But if you really think about it, like how much, and if you are intentional about it, it should bring a certain level of emotion to you, of like thinking about, man, like what if you didn't have your family, and that sounds kind of like horrific, but like it gives you a better perspective on your family and how much you appreciate them, that now you, when they do something that you get annoyed by, you're not, it doesn't even affect you because you're just like so grateful to have them in your life. Yeah.
I think that's that's so true. Like I think that's why initially I had a lot of resistance towards anybody. Like, so again, I haven't read it, so this might sound off base. Like the idea of like miracle morning or whatever, like where it was like very prescribed like that. I think that's where my resistance came because I was like, well, then it's just going to be a to-do list, and I don't want it to be a to-do list. I want it to be like, I'm sure that book wants you to feel it too. Is that what the whole point of the book is? But
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, so I do I love the Miracle Morning because it just aligned with me in many
Yeah.
aspects. Because it just like breaks down a number of things that I wanted to do already that I feel like,
Mhm.
I don't know, you haven't read it, but you may already be doing like everything that he lists to
Probably.
do. So, it's basically like and I said seven, it's six. Clearly, I don't know how many letters are in savers. But basically, so it's the word savers, and
Mhm.
um, S is for silent. So that's like your meditation, your morning routine, your gratitude. That's like part of that. And then A is your affirmation. So like, what is the identity that you're trying to bring in? V is visualization, which I find is so impactful. It's one that I do tend to skip sometimes a little bit more often, but I've been doing it much more recently, and it's so powerful to like visualize that goal that you want and see it already completed and how much that
Mm.
can impact you. And then exercise, which is a massive one. If you guys haven't listened to the last episode with Dania, is like all about physical fitness and exercise and how much that plays an important part. So I'm somebody who loves physical activity and how much it contributes to. And then R is reading, which was something
Mhm.
that I always wanted to do more of, that was like holding me back because it goes back to the affirmations that I identified myself as a non-reader.
Mhm.
And so I shifted that identity to I am a reader. And this past week, I've been like flying through my book. Like I've noticed I just tried to go a little faster in how I was reading and was like, oh my gosh, you are reading at lightning speed, for me. Because I was struggled with reading. I was a super slow reader. I had to do like extra classes growing up. Like it was always, it held me back so much, throughout my childhood. And then the last one is scribing, which
Mhm.
is just, he makes a joke that he wanted to complete the acronym for it to make sense. And so It
Get
basically it's just like
that.
reflection and like journaling and writing down,
Okay,
you know.
so I do it. I shouldn't. So here's the opinion that I had formed, the judgment that I had formed around all like any of that was that it was just like very to-do listy, but I do all of those besides exercise.
Are you
So I guess
telling me that you judged a book by its cover?
I mean, technically, I probably judged it by its like fans on the internet. Maybe I think there's this what is it like the four tendencies or whatever? I think I'm the one that like rebels. I love systems, but I also rebel against systems. It's very confusing. It's very confusing inside of my head. So like whenever there's like I'm like, I think I'm gonna do it my way. Turns out my way is very similar to that way. So
Well,
here we are.
I'm glad I could enlighten you on Hell Elrod and the Miracle Morning. Yeah, and I think some people need structure, and I think that's an important part too to kind of like tie it back is
Yeah.
understanding like if you need structure and you want a more like this is what you need to do instead of like the improvise, because my morning routine kind of came from learning from different things, and just like figuring out what works. And when I did a variety of different things. I started tweaking things on my own. And just like
Yeah.
the Miracle Morning, I just really loved. And so I stuck to it. I kept it. And the one thing that is really fascinating too about the Miracle Morning, and I forget whether he says this in the book or not, but I write out savers at the top of my page in my journal.
Oh.
And so when I do it, I cross it off. And so if you've read Atomic Habits, that's like a big part of habit tracking. And
Mhm.
so I can go back through and there's again, forming that habit where I'm like, I want to check that off, you know? And so like, that's one of those things where when you understand these things, you understand how your brain works, it becomes a much more impactful thing that when I write out savers, and I don't cross off the E because I didn't exercise that day, I'm like really mad at myself. And so I make sure that the next day I'm like, all right, well, I'm definitely crossing off E
That
today.
is. Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. I think what's interesting is like when you I think what's interesting is like how that is so based in like neuroscience and how our brains work to be more efficient and how like that is all like so true in both of our experiences and these authors' experiences, etc. But then like that's like how you go on to create things in your life, like in your business, is through habits. Like it's literally how you get everything that you want. It's by continually showing up, by continually doing the thing. And so it's like, yeah, we're talking about journaling and affirmations, but like that's like a small glimpse into like what can unlock so much in your life. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I said that clearly.
Absolutely. It's why I'm obsessed with habits because I think it is everything. You know, it's if you want to achieve your goals, you need to create the habits that are going to achieve your goals. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that. If you want to have a bigger house, well, guess where that starts? It starts with saving money. What's your habit? What's your spending habits? What's your saving habits? Like all of these things correlate to, you could even take it further in like to your habits of what the temperature is in your house and like how that correlates to how much, um, it's such a crazy world and understanding like what our habits are. If you, again, to use the money analogy too, if like you like shopping, but you go to the store and like you will always have this habit of when you go into this one store, you always buy something, then that that's your habit. How do you break that habit? Could it be like not going into the store? But again, and that comes back to like the habit loop in, how we can incorporate what our habits are to make the best choices that serve us. That's why I love all this because, and this is why like what my membership is based around is like incorporating all of these books that I've read into a full system because they do intertwine. When you write your goals every day, then you're now setting the intention of like what you want to achieve. So you're going to make the best choices throughout the day because you've now wrote your goal. And so it's going to help you to achieve your goal because you've now written it every day. You're thinking about it. If you say you want to lose weight, is that going to work? If you think about losing weight each day write it down every day, when those bad choices come up, you're going to be more likely to make the right decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's I say this sometimes in different, copy to kind of poke people a little bit, but it's like it's not even that difficult. And I think a lot of times people think because it is pretty simple to understand that it means it's not as effective. And I'm like, well, there's a reason that everybody on your podcast and every successful person basically ever says, show gratitude, write your gratitude out. But like, how many people actually do that? Or are people, 9 out of 10 people saying like, I don't know, that's too easy. It must be something harder. I don't know, it's too simple. Like, I don't know. But the people that do it are the people that get places and do things and accomplish things. And so I guess I'm saying all of this to say like it might sound simple and that's a good thing. Like simple does not mean ineffective by any way, shape, or form.
Right. And there's a level of belief, I feel, that comes with it as well, and just in trusting in that these things work. When somebody who is much more successful than you says to do something, it's probably something you should do. And I'm not saying me, I'm saying listen to these books, listen to these the Tony Robbins and the Brendan Burchards, and I'm just, sharing their message so that more people will, do it. Because I have seen the impact, and it does, and it's so great. I love that you brought that up because it is such a simple thing to do, yet people don't make a habit of doing it. And
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. When somebody's like, I'm not happy, well, like, have you tried a gratitude journal? That's like my rebuttal to that. And I'm sure most people would probably be like, that's stupid. How is that going to help me? I'm upset. Like,
Yeah.
oh, sorry. But if you haven't tried it, then I don't feel sorry for you, because you're not giving it an opportunity to work.
Change your life.
And
Yeah.
that goes to like what you were talking about earlier with the action. You don't like just take action on things and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, then tweak it, change it, do it differently, find a new way, and
Yeah.
move forward.
I think that is, I mean, I get it because it's not like I'm like immune to fear or anything like that, but like there's so much fear in doing things. And I find, which seems to blow my clients' minds, but I find that most of my clients know exactly what they need to do. They're just not doing it out of fear. Like, it's not like they're coming in and I'm saying like, all right, execute this strategy and this strategy and this strategy. It's just getting them out of the way of stopping doing the strategies that they want to do. Like, they already know, they already have it inside of them. They already are like, they have the whole thing. Like, literally, I was on a client call today. She knew exactly what she wanted to do. It was just a matter of like working through this like fear and stuff. And so I say all that to say that like the action is potentially the hardest part because there will be fear. But if you, and this is a concept from NLP, but like if you just accept that there's no such thing as failure, then what's there to be scared of? And I don't believe there's failure. I believe you get what you want or you learn something. And like that makes everything so much simpler and easier to move forward because you're like, okay, I can't fail. Like I'm just gonna accomplish what I set out to do, or I'm gonna learn something that will help me do it next time. Period. End of story.
Yes, I love that. It is, there's an association that comes with fear that like pain follows. And it's just like more often not the case. I know, like, I love Will Smith's story. I don't know if you've heard it, but your smile makes you seem like you're a Will Smith fan, so that's great.
Of course I am.
Yeah, I love Will Smith. He's awesome. So he shares a story about going skydiving and just how the whole time you're so scared. Like the week before, like every day leading up to it, the hours that are happening, but then the actual act of you jumping out of a plane, perfectly good airplane, you're not scared anymore. And it's the buildup that often is the most fearful thing. And as someone who has gone skydiving, I can relate to that 100%. Have you gone skydiving?
I haven't. there was a there was like a time when people that like my friends were doing it in different kind of groups, and I always chickened out. I never did it, but that was I wasn't this person. I want to go now that I'm older and wiser, but I was never young and fearless. I was young and
Oh,
scared.
yes. Oh, this may have to be our mastermind trip that we do, go skydiving. Because
Yeah,
I think everyone should do it. I think it's one of the most exhilarating things you can do. There's just again, it's like that fear is part of it, and overcoming it. And I was laughing hysterically before the flight, or like while I'm on the plane, just like out of pure fear. You
oh
know,
man,
like if it was any other emotion, I'd be crying my eyes out. But I chose to use laughter as
as your
like my
process.
way to, process the fear that I was feeling. And so, but it was a life changing experience for me, and I just think that everyone should do it because again, like you realize that the actual falling out of the plane is not actually what's scaring you. And there's so
Yeah,
many deeper underlying messages there that people are scared of like video, but when they actually like put it out there, they're like not really that worried about it anymore.
yeah. I think that there's so many parallels, like in business stuff. I know one that I had for a while, which is going to sound so silly, but like if I ever had to write an email that was like a little more assertive, like enforcing a boundary or something like that, I would just build it up in my head. I would put it off the same way that I'm sure people do with video. And then you finally do it and you're like, why did I wait 3 weeks to do this? Like this took me 5 minutes. It was so simple. Like I really just let it become this huge thing. And I made it worse for me with emails by waiting so long and like all of this, but like it's nothing. It's literally nothing. It's fine. Like I'm still fine. You're right. And so yeah, I feel like there's a ton of parallels and for that in business of like things that you get so scared of that when you do it, you're just like, oh, okay, that was not a big deal. On to the
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
next.
Just, jump out of the plane. Just take
Yeah,
action. See what
yeah.
happens.
And
Yeah.
I
And
think
to
something that's interesting. Okay.
go ahead.
I was going to say that I think when you think about how fear feels like in your body, which might be like something that people haven't thought about, but if you think about like what it feels like to feel fear, for most people, it's kind of like those like, butterflies, like a little bit of like a tummy ache or whatever. But then if you think about what does excitement feel like, pretty similar. So is it fear or is it excitement? And I think in a lot of ways, those go really hand in hand. If you think about jumping out of an airplane or going on a roller coaster or like getting a tattoo or whatever, like those are two peas in the same pot. And so like just choose it as excitement. Like of course there's real fear. Like if you're actually in danger, don't choose excitement. Like, but that will feel even more different in your body, right? That will feel way different than just butterflies in your stomach. That will feel like whatever cold sweat or something. So like you'll know that that's a different kind of fear. But if it's just like a little antsy, a little like that's the same as excitement. So
That's
maybe you're
so
just really
awesome.
excited.
That is. It's a great comparison. It's almost like the same as happiness and sadness. Like a wedding and a funeral. There's people crying at both.
Me
Uh,
watching any episode of Queer Eye or that new show Say I Do, where they're just changing people's lives. I'm like laughing and crying at the same time the whole episode.
yes. Oh, it is. It's an amazing thing, though. Like it just the way that our emotions are and how correlated they are from both sides. And like to go back to what you were talking about in regards to like fear and failure, because I think that's a big part of the fear is most of the times people are afraid of the failure. Um, but it's like if you just accept that failure is not a bad thing and that it's just another learning experience and that being bad is okay, then you start to get more excited and you think about this, wow, this is going to be such a great learning experience instead of coming at that like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen if I do this? What if I don't? What if it doesn't go well?
Yeah,
And really just focusing on accomplishing it versus the outcome.
I completely agree. Something I ask something that I asked myself when I was kind of having these realizations around failure, and that I ask clients and stuff when it comes up is like, what are you actually scared of? Because like failure is kind of subjective. Like what I think is a failure might not be what you think is a failure. It might not be what whatever next person thinks is a failure. And so I find that for a lot of people, and myself included, like it wasn't even defined. It was just like this ambiguous thing we were scared of. But like when you really dig into it, you're like, for me, like what would failure actually be? I realized how far away from that I really was. Like I would say, oh, I'm scared to go do this video because I'm scared of I might fail. But when I really think about what failure is, it's like I lose my business, I lose my house, like I lose my partner, I lose my cats. Like, is that going to happen if this video doesn't go well? Like, absolutely not. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like really recognizing what it is that you're so scared of, and seeing that it's so far away from what could potentially actually logically happen
Yeah.
helps me.
No, absolutely. And I think that's powerful. I think Tim Ferriss has a TED Talk. I remember watching it about fear, and
Mm,
talks about like what is the worst case scenario. And at the time it was like very helpful for me because I was going through like whether or not to start my business or not.
mm,
And I was living with my friends and out from my parents. I was kind of like, this doesn't work. I have to move back home with my parents. It's like, wow, that's like not really that bad of a worst case scenario. There's definitely worse things that I could think of that, like, yeah, well, all right. So I don't really have anything to be scared of when you really think about what the worst case scenario really could be. And also just having the belief that you'll figure it out as you go. You've
yeah.
gotten through this much of your life so far.
I literally, yeah, completely agree. I say that all the time. I'm like, I managed to make it this far. Like, I must be doing something right.
It's amazing. It's amazing, like, what we realize we're capable of when we look back and reflect on what we've accomplished already.
Yeah. Bringing it back to the gratitude, because I feel like that is something when I do gratitude, and when I kind of bring it to people that have not yet done it, I always say like let's just say you put a number on it, 10 things you're grateful for. All right, 3 of those need to be things that are about you, that you're grateful for, things that you've done, things that you are like, needs to be not just like, oh, I'm grateful for my house, I'm grateful for, my iPhone, and I'm grateful for my water bottle. Like, no, I'm grateful for like myself for wanting to learn more about this subject, or I'm grateful for myself for taking action on that thing, and really making sure that you own what you've done and who you are and what you can do.
Yes, absolutely. And that reflection also too, because my part of my nightly routine is a reflection and looking back on like, what have I accomplished? How have you done today? Like, what have you accomplished? And that's such an important aspect. It's the same thing of like, if you take time to reflect on where you've been in the last 6 months, the last year, the last 5 years, and you're like, oh wow, I actually have done a lot. And I feel like as business owners, we suffer through that a lot because we think so much about the future and where we're going, and we don't take a moment to be like, wow, like let me just like look back for a second. Like, whoa, remember what that was like? Remember when you didn't have a business? Remember when you were staying up super late, working a 9 to 5, just like trying to figure this out, spending hours upon
Yeah.
hours, building something that wasn't even just in your head. Um,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
coming up for me.
yeah.
I don't know if it's coming up for you of like when you first started, if you had that, that aspect.
Yeah. No, I had a lot of late nights, a lot of Pinterest searching on how to do things. But I do think that's really important, and that makes me think of something that I just wrote some content around. This is like fresh on my mind, but this idea of like when you set goals, and being grateful for the steps along the way to it. Like, so let's say for example, you had this goal of like, okay, I'm going to make $10,000 this month, and you make $1,000, and making sure that you feel really freaking good about that $1,000, because I think most people, in my experience, default to the other thing and being like, 9,000 more to go. No, celebrate that 1,000. Like, feel really good about that, and know that the rest is coming. But like, don't just always see it from. I mean, I guess that's like what, like glass half empty or whatever. But I think that reflection piece is like really important to say like, no, I did this today. I made this today. I created this today. I helped this today or whatever. Versus just focusing on, you know, the big picture, all the things left to do or
Hmm.
whatever.
Right. Yeah. Focusing on the accomplishments of the day versus the outcomes that you're trying to think of. Oh, you didn't lose 50 pounds, but did you lose one? Like, great, because now you're, 49 pounds, you're closer. You're 1 pound
Yeah.
closer to your goal.
Yeah.
Such
One
a
pound closer than you were yesterday.
Yeah, and that goes back to the habits too. Is like it's small steps, small
Mhm.
things that we create in our lives that can create massive change. Like you stop buying pretzels. That's a weakness of mine, so I thought it just came to my head. Like if you can take these little habits of things that like don't serve you, that are bad for you, and slowly start to eliminate it, you're making small changes that have massive growth over time instead of trying
Mhm.
to make massive changes, which is why most people struggle with diets. And because they go from not exercising to not dieting to this like rabbit food, like, 6 hours, 6 days a week workouts. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's not going to work. Your body can't
Yeah.
sustain that. It starts with just some healthy choices, better healthy choices, starts with just going for walks. Like, that's amazing
Totally.
what can happen.
Totally. And like something that I don't remember who said it to me in what context, but the statement is that like willpower is not an unlimited resource. Like all of those sorts of like going about things where you just like, full-fledged dive all the way in, that kind of stuff. Like that's depending on willpower and like you will run out of that without the habits and things to support it. And so yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, I think that may be in Atomic Habits. I forget whether it's in the Power of Habit or not. That
Mhm.
aspect of like you need to help your willpower out. When you're feeling the willpower, you need to set things in place so that when you don't have it, you have
You
that
can
support
still,
from yourself.
yeah, yeah, totally,
Awesome. Amazing.
totally.
Love it. This is so awesome. I have a few quick things. So one thing
Yeah.
I'd love to ask and is I know we talked a little bit about some different books, but do you have any books that you like absolutely love, recommend? It doesn't have to be about habits. Again, it can be like anything,
Mhm.
something that you always
Yeah.
recommend or just like a life-changing book.
I do. It's not about habits, but it could be about habits if you read it through that lens. But it, regardless, changed everything for me. It's by uh, sorry, I'm blanking. This is gonna sound bad on your podcast. Oh my gosh, I just totally blanked on the name of the book. I gotta Google it. The author's name is Greg McCown, and I just totally blanked on it.
Greg
Essentialism.
McCown. Oh yeah,
Essentialism.
that
I
sounds
I
so
wanted to
familiar because
say I wanted to say existentialism, which is a completely different subject. And so I was like, that is not the subject. Essentialism. So it's really about like less but better, right?
Yeah, I've listened to it. I probably need to do a re-listen because I'm trying to remember like certain things and I can't. So that probably means I'm
Keep
due for another listen. That's one thing. I have a whole list of books, but I find it almost more impactful to go back through books you've already listened to than to try and start another book, because that book's just going to keep going. I got, there's I'm with you
um,
and having so many. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So cool. Lastly, what is the best place for somebody to reach out to you, follow you? Um,
yeah. I'm on Instagram mostly. I am at Kaitlyn S. Kessler, which I guess I'll tell you how to spell it for in the show
I'll
notes
put
or
it in the show
whatever.
notes. Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I feel
but
like you have a pretty easy last name. It's not like Bonatadabis where someone would have to try and spell that. I think people
yeah.
go Caitlin with an Aitlyn. There you go. And then, you can go from
You nailed
there.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mostly hang out over on Instagram. I like to do lots of lives and stories and share cat pics and mindset stuff.
Nice. Cat pics and mindset. There you go. If you didn't need a reason, that's just screaming why you need to go follow Caitlin right now. Love it.
Appreciate it. Thank
Awesome.
you.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Thank you
you.
everyone for listening, and remember, let's keep growing together. And if you enjoyed this message, please take a moment to write a review. By writing a review, it helps people find this message and helps me help more people. And if you really, really liked it and you think this message could help someone else, take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, and please tag me at Nick J. Boni, NickJBoni, so I can show my appreciation for you. We can all win by helping each other grow. Thank you. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.